All right, and we're live.
All right.
So I'm joined here on Fix Dalton, episode 2, with Lee Witte, who is running for township trustee for Dalton, and Lee is one of the owner-operators of Hidden Creek Farm. So it'll be interesting because we'll get to dive through the change that has been happening over the last year for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And probably more on your end, but it's definitely been a crazy year.
Yeah, sure has.
So I believe it's been just over a year because you got sued in last May.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so take us back to that moment. At the time, I know a decent amount about it, but you didn't really know anything was happening. Then all of a sudden you were getting sued. What was going on there?
So we had a sale, a succulent sale that ended up kind of there was cars on both sides of the river road. And I think that's maybe the final straw that maybe broke my neighbor's back or whatever.
And mixed metaphor there.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden we got notified by the township that there was a complaint against us. So we Crystal went down to the township and tried to figure that out, and got brought into a back room. They were kind of trying to question her and trying to get some more information out of her without a witness being there for her side. So she left, and then a couple of days later we found out that their neighbor was suing us. And it was more than just it wasn't just for being for filling up the road or anything like that. It was for wanting to shut us down. Mm-hmm. Didn't like what we were doing, but we had no prior knowledge. He never came over and asked, hey, can you move something? Can you do something? Can we work something out here? We never even knew this was coming. So it's just kind of out of the blue, boom. Now we're being sued, and the township was coming after us because they said we couldn't do what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But if you look into at the law, the Right to Farm Act, stuff like that, that's why we got certified to know that we were in compliance, or at least in compliance. We were in compliance with state law. Right. And oh gosh, I don't even know how to phrase that, but the
GAMPs and
we were with the GAMPs and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That allowed us to do what we're doing at our place.
Right.
So from there, it's just been kind of crazy. Let's see. We end up doing got everybody together. That's how we got Fix Dalton Township going. You kind of helped rally that all and get everybody to the meeting to help let Dalton Township know that as citizens or residents of Dalton Township, we don't like what's going on. These kids are doing, well, I guess you call me a kid.
You're referring to yourself as a kid. That's good.
But that's what everybody calls. That's what everybody calls us.
That's what everyone refers to
kids.
So yeah.
They're trying to do a good thing. Help growing good food for the community, and just doing hard work and keeping things tidy. And they're not trying to hurt anyone. Yeah. So, what's the deal?
Yeah, it got pretty crazy fast. And so the reason I stepped in there, and we haven't specifically talked about this, but I see a huge division between the neighbor suing you and the township suing you, and how they went about it without steps beforehand, right? So, like if the neighbor was suing you, I wouldn't have done anything. I'd be like, "Oh, Lee, that's a bummer. Yeah, too bad for you. I hope you deal with that." Yep. And that would have been it, right? But the township is a different deal because it's a public entity, and it's super important. And I believe that's one of the major fears to have in life is of the government. Yeah, right? If you read history, that's one of the main lessons that history teaches. And then the fact that they coordinated it with the neighbor to sue you at the same time, to not give you notice and call you the same day about the lawsuit to inform you, which seems like a major violation of due process, or what should be a major violation of due process to me, because otherwise you don't arrive, you don't win the case. And if you have a couple hour notice, if you happen to check your phone, then that's not good. Yeah. And then the stepping across the line of going from there were a lot of crazy like lies and stuff and whatnot thrown around in there. Those first couple of weeks were kind of wild, in that they said it was a safety thing with the road.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had parking in the farm area, but you had too many people show up, and they said there was no parking, which was a lie. There was parking, it just overflowed. And then they said it was just that, in the township said all sorts of stuff when people were calling in. I had people calling me to be like, hey, what's happening over there? And then I was telling people that the township was suing you, and then they would call the township, and then the township, various people at the township would tell the people I know that the township isn't suing you, and then they would call me back, and I would say, no, the township is suing them. Like, Lee showed me the paperwork. It's a lawsuit to shut them down. And the fact that it wasn't just like a temporary restraining order to figure out parking. It was a lawsuit to completely shut down your operation. And so being that aggressive, that fast, right off the bat, it was kind of like, respond, do something, right? Be brave, do something now or never.
Because there was no de-escalation. You know, it went right to, you need to stop what you're doing immediately.
Or else. Right.
It's like, can we talk about this?
Right, it was intense. And that's why, and I wrote that article right off the bat, which it was at jeffthinks.com on my website, and eventually ended up in this little book, which is weird. I didn't plan it all, and but it's in there now. and then I made the Concerned Citizens of Dalton Township Facebook group. I think in the first week or two. And because the Facebook group was controlled by Tony Barnes and other people, and they would delete people and block people for talking about stuff against them, and I created the Facebook event. Because June 10th was going to be the next township meeting.
Which was pretty quick.
Right.
A couple weeks after that whole thing happened. So.
And I created that event to get a bunch of people there and to get people out and talking, and wrote an article on talking and everything. And we did a lot of that. I mean, a lot of that happened, and I wrote up what I called the citizens resolution. You can't actually get government paperwork approved that quickly unless I'm not a lawyer, unless you know some special legal magic. You can do special stuff, or if you have money, you can do amazing things. But I don't have either. So I wrote up that citizens resolution and called for the resignation of Tony Barnes, which is a pretty intense move, but I believe they initiated the aggressive action. And then I was very surprised that so many people wanted to sign it. I thought I was going to be the only one to sign it, and a bunch of people asked me to sign it. It was kind of amazing. So that whole thing happens, and then you're just into it, right? You're like in this new legal world of there are people that it's normal, right? Lawyers, it's very normal. Big business people, it's very normal to sue and get sued all the time, but not for a small time farmer.
Never been in the legal system,
and I know you were kind of lost there at first, like getting a lawyer and stuff like that. What exactly happened there, and what was going through your head at first?
Well, and the main thing too, I was at work when when Crystal had to go run down to the court building.
Right.
I was at work. I didn't even know where she was. She was then I finally figured out she was at the court building. Like, what's going on? So she bared a lot of the brunt of it. She had to go down there, but we were part of the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, just in case, because we do have our herd share, so we had them write up our contract, stuff like that. So we were in we were in that group for matters like this,
right?
So
like insurance almost.
It's kind of like insurance, like lawyer insurance,
like just in case you need it.
Yeah. Right. So but we needed somebody like ASAP. We got a hold of them. And it was like 5 o'clock at night, so everybody's going home. But then they did come through. We got legal representation, or local representation, and then our head lawyer, who was out of the UP, we ended up getting them. Man, it's been a year already. I'm already kind of forgetting some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But then, where was I going with that?
Well, because Randy from the UP stepped in with Michelle and Mark.
Yeah, Mark and Randy. Randy, he's went through the same kind of thing. Randy Buechler from the UP, Shady Grove Farm. He went through the kind of same thing. The township was coming after him for having a farm in a like a lakefront residential zoned property, but underneath the Right to Farm Act, he was following the law to the T.
Yeah.
Boom.
When I saw a satellite view of his thing too, and it's like yours. It's like woods.
Yeah. There's woods. I mean, I've been there. I went to a hog butchering class, and there's homes, but like he has 6 acres. I think they have 6 acres. Everybody has a little bit of property up there. It's the UP.
Right. I have some family up there. It's a lot of the UP is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong going on there. And just like us, there's nothing wrong going on. I mean, we're trying to live off our land and produce stuff for people to eat. Kind of important.
Right.
So we got talks with him, and then Mark Baker. We actually went up to his home and confided in him with how should we go about this. Like we haven't been in this arena at all. So like
learning curve.
Yeah, major steep learning curve, like 90 degrees. We're scaling a wall. So we were kind of, like you said, we were kind of lost. I don't even know what to do. Quite a few hard weeks there because just trying to get our bearings straight. But then once we got our lawyers kind of going and situated, and then the law process starting, which draws itself out already anyway, to scheduling and all that stuff. So then you got to kind of get that settle down period and kind of sort everything out. Then after that, it took a while. I don't even remember when that was already. I think the thing was in July. I already can't remember. I'm
not sure. I know it was last May you got sued. It was June 10th, I believe, that the meeting was. And then my memory of dates get a little fuzzy. I mentioned a bunch of them in these articles, but I can't remember the specific dates of a bunch of stuff.
But then I think we went to the court hearing, or the first court hearing, to just, I think, give the judge the lowdown of whatever's going on. Because
the judge thought it was weird that you had been brought in so abruptly and whatnot too. So then he kind of delayed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Shoot, where am I going?
No, that's fair enough, man. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And you kept going with the court thing. Here's an interesting thing. So I've been thinking of these things as 2 separate cases, right? Kind of like at the beginning. And it actually gets into this guy. These aren't all the books that are like on political corruption. And I know you've read The Law by Frederick Bastiat. Highly recommend that.
Yep.
And the whole French liberal school, except for Molinari, is not my favorite. But Good Citizenship by Grover Cleveland, right? Former president, first Democrats after the Civil War to be elected, I do believe. Yeah, because there were a couple of Republicans after that. And because they were the anti-slavery party. So they lost in 1856. Lincoln got elected in 1860. And then, and then I guess Johnson after Lincoln got killed. But then he jumped to Grover Cleveland before he got a Democrat. But he did a bunch of fighting against corruption. That was a lot of what he was known for. And so he says in here, might even have it marked because I do like it. Toleration in all things save dishonesty and infidelity to public trusts, right? And so, it's kind of fancy language, slightly, but it's that difference between the neighbor suing you and the township suing you to shut you down, especially without some sort of mediation process.
Yeah. Not
necessarily between you and the neighbor. I think that would be really good to look at, trying to set something up like that. But a mediation process between you and that township.
Yeah.
And board discussions, voting. And that's... the violation of the Open Meetings Act was huge, right? Because you had a violation of the Right to Farm Act, which is huge on your end because you're a farmer. I'm not a farmer. And the violation of the Open Meetings Act was huge to me. The fact that they didn't vote on suing you was just this one thing. The supervisor can just decide to sue anyone at any time he wants. Deal with the township lawyer and just boom, take him out. It's and then lying about it. Drove me nuts, and I recorded one phone call with Grabinski, the zoning administrator, and a bunch of other people told me that a bunch of other people at the township lied about it. And we have some posts from trustees saying that they didn't even know about it, and all this crazy stuff. And I realized that there had been a breach of the public trust, but the entire system at the township level of checks and balances, like the oversight that the trustees are supposed to be to make sure that bad stuff isn't happening, had broken and had to be restored. So that's kind of the movement that I tried to found, and I think we've largely had a lot of success in now, although it's been a stressful, annoying year. And so what about you, right? So because you're running for trustee now. And did you go through a transition of kind of learning about rights over this time, or did you know about them before, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I've been getting more into that. I mean, I've always kind of known some, but like I have gotten more in depth. I don't know, it's kind of like they tiered together. I was already kind of like watching more things and just getting my head more wrapped around my rights as a human being, really. And then in conjunction with our Constitution and how the system works. This getting in the trustee, I want to see how the local stuff works.
Right.
I mean, like you said, trustees are supposed to be kind of more like the oversight a little bit. We're not there all the time, but we're there to kind of keep checks and balances on it.
Right.
So, I lose my train of thought.
Yeah, that's fine. I can see your hands are dirty. I know you've been farming so far.
I've been cooking in the field all day. So,
I agree. Right, and it's a huge history thing. So you can pull from history in a couple of different ways. Well, in lots of different ways there. One is from the farming aspect. Like in World War II, there were victory gardens, right? And what we think of as like the peace sign originally was a V. It meant victory, and then it got transformed over the next couple of generations into peace, which is also good. And I think there's actually a lot to take apart. There's a lot of emergent meaning in that, the symbol of victory switching to the symbol of peace. But nevertheless, we won't go deep into that philosophy of symbolism. But they had victory gardens. They encouraged people to have gardens and all this stuff. And now there's been kind of over the last couple of decades almost this assault in different places in the country against farms, especially against small farms, not so much against large farms. Large businesses, a lot different. That's what the law and Boschet talk about a lot, is that coming together of government and large businesses. But even gardens, I've seen in different counties and municipalities, small municipalities, is really weird to see.
Yeah, they're like ratcheting down on people making their own food, which seems very odd to me, especially as the way this country was put together was property rights. They want you to be able to sustain yourself.
Right.
And we've come a long way from that.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to see that, and it's painful to see that they're coming after people trying to provide for themselves and others. And
yeah, and it's weird. See, and like I read, I write, I do poetry, I do philosophy, I teach. I teach English online to people in a bunch of different countries around the world. I don't do farming, right? And I'm not gonna be growing stuff. And when I could, but that's not where I choose to spend my effort. So I need people like you.
Everybody has their purpose or their
societal role.
Yeah, what they excel at. So
right. And so I think it's important to protect those small farms, and there's that whole history to draw from.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole other aspect of history, so I wrote on my blog the 5 key documents in the history of freedom, which kind of has a clunky name, but I think is super important, and this is kind of eye tracking. Britain has a huge part to play in here. Is that in 1066, William the Conqueror was a Norman, right? Vikings that come down, they conquered part of France, and switched over their language, their religion, everything to the French system. And then a couple of generations later, they had conquered England, and they, in 1100, I'm probably getting too detailed, but nevertheless, all right, in 1100, they had the Charter of Liberties under Henry I, which was kind of this first major movement of restricting the government's power. And I mean, that's under a king. There wasn't even a parliament at that time, right? There wasn't even much of an advisory council like you see in the Middle Ages. You're going into the Middle Ages so early. And the history there is interesting, right? Because I have a direct ancestor, Hugh, that was a purse bearer for Henry I. That's kind of cool. And then that advances, right? So that gets passed, and they completely ignore it. The king completely ignored it. But it's super important, because in 1215, you get the Magna Carta that everyone knows about. Super important. And that never would have happened without the Charter of Liberties in 1100, because they used that as a precedent. Right, the Archbishop of Canterbury used it at the time. Super important. And then that progresses. That's renewed several times throughout history. And then in 1628, Sir Edward Coke ends up writing the Petition of Right, which is directly where several of the amendments in the Bill of Rights comes from. I think the Third and Fourth Amendment come directly from there. It's really nice. Eventually, he was killed by the king. He was executed. But super important. And actually, Roger Williams, who founded Rhode Island, which is kind of the first time in history, if you discount the Druze in 1017, which was a Muslim off-branch. But in 1636, Rhode Island was founded as the first place to really have religious freedom specifically for that place. And then William Penn followed it up in Pennsylvania, and then Virginia came after. So that 1628 is super important. In 1689, William and Mary, William of Orange from the Netherlands, in the Anglo-Dutch War, the Dutch end up winning that war. Almost no one knows that. And you get the English Bill of Rights, which is huge. And then a century later, 1789, the American Bill of Rights comes in a couple of years after the Constitution and is ratified. Well, just a little bit after the Constitution is ratified in 1791. And that whole progression of history where like freedom is kind of adding up is our history. And I think it's super important, which is why I proposed in Article 17 of my writing to have freedom documents that help lay out in a specific way, almost like a Bill of Rights, same type of idea, like all those documents, where it lays out these specific limitations of the township. Now, most townships don't have anything like that explicitly, but the checks and balances of power works anyways. I'm just kind of curious, what do you think of that type of idea? It might be crazy. Sometimes I write crazy things, but it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, but I guess, you get the township to sit down and do, how much power do you want the township to have?
Right.
Pretty much, it's like, you can't have the township or a government entity running your everyday life.
Right.
I mean, where are the restrictions? I mean, some people, whatever, might call it crazy or whatever, but we got to have some way of restricting that power in that government agency.
Yeah. And the government's super important. Yeah. Because people do a lot of bad stuff, and you need a government to protect individual rights from other individuals. Yeah. But you have to have your rights protected from the government itself. You have to have both. Yeah. And hopefully, if your government's working properly, they protect you from other governments infringing on your rights. That's a major part. So there's a lot to play, and it's extremely complex, and it's very difficult, tumultuous. So I agree. And I think, so at first, a year ago, right, you're thrown into this haze, you have this huge learning curve. I'm confident that at several points in there, your outlook on life turned bad. I assume. Mine did. Right? So how has that gone now? All right, do you have a kind of a positive outlook on what might happen in the township, or are you thinking things might go bad? What are you feeling as far as that goes?
I feel it's going in a good direction. A lot more people are aware, I guess, of the situation. Just not even just of our farm. I think it really exploded with our farm.
Right.
But I hear, like Gerald that you had on before.
Yeah.
He's had issues with the township.
Right.
I've heard of other people. They're not even a farm. I guess you can call them a farm, but they're just growing their own food, and they've been hassled by the township.
Right.
So, where does it stop? You can't just keep on going around picking on all these people for just trying to do their thing.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, why am I losing track all the time here?
Yeah, that's all right, man. Well, I've heard about people wanting to put up little greenhouses, like personal greenhouses, and they're not allowed. Wanting to plant some blueberry bushes, like literally blueberry bushes in their backyard.
Yeah.
Not allowed. That seems very odd to me. And you haven't gotten this because I wrote those articles and whatnot, and thousands of views, and so I got highly associated with this thing, and I've had messages directly, and I've just talked like physically. I've had people meet me in person and just greet me and tell me various complaints about the township, kind of bullying them, intimidating them in a similar way. And I've had business people message me and say, "I'm glad someone's doing something. I can't do anything." Right, quoting, paraphrase quoting them.
Yeah.
I can't do anything because otherwise they'll harass me more. So I'm glad someone's doing something, and it's really odd to hear because I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah, and as we're talking, where is this direction coming from?
Right.
As a township, the people are all the governments in America. I thought, are supposed to be directed by the citizens. The citizens, of that township or state, whatever. Why are they directing all their energy towards harassing people when, like in our situation too, where's the vote? Where was the vote to go to do this kind of thing? I understand you can't sit there and, possibly vote on every little thing, but why do you keep on going after things like that?
Right.
Why do you want this division between that, the township and the farms, or people just growing food or doing what they want to do on their thing, on their property? Where is that coming from? That's my main question. Where is that drive to control? Right,
because if it's coming from the general population, there's no stopping it. Yeah. I have a few other books here, but I don't have one from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote a book while he was in a gulag in the Soviet Union, which is super interesting. I have students that lived in the Soviet Union, right? Because I teach English to kids, but I also teach English to adults and people of all ages and all statuses, right? Economic levels all over the place, and it's super interesting to hear. So I understand how voting works in China, because I've talked to people about it in Russia, because I've talked to people about it in Belarus, because I've talked to people about it, people that live there, people that were involved in politics and business and all of that stuff. And so you're right. If the will of the people is on that side, I'll still be for individual rights through checks and balances, but I will lose, right? Which, hey, fair enough. Life is a very tragic event. But I don't think the people are. Yeah. So it's a good question of kind of where is this directive coming from? Who is driving this thing?
Yeah. So.
And I don't know.
Yeah. We may never know.
Yeah, so the one recall that I did against it, right? So with that whole build-up, I did the one recall, and I filed the police report and did the second recall. Those were major actions. I wrote the resolution for the county to support you guys, and I don't think it ever got proposed. I had a county commissioner that was going to propose it, and it never came up. But that's kind of all that stuff I packed into there, which was a learning curve for me, and obviously both of my recalls got rejected, which seemed very political, but that's okay. And I was told by a cop that the Open Meetings Act just doesn't matter. The state police officer, it's not enforceable at all. And the prosecutor turned down pursuing it, and no one seems to care about the Open Meetings Act at all. Which is why I think it's super important that the township enforce it upon itself.
Yeah.
Which is super difficult to do. You know, I mean, it's hard to keep yourself on a diet.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get into like government power.
Yeah.
How hard is it to limit your own power? It's extremely difficult thing to ask in anyone. Yeah. And it's almost impossible to do.
Very easy to indulge. In the power. Yeah.
I agree. I see it in myself. I see it in everyone. It's always in there, right? Which is what the kind of the stories of all that type of stuff teach us. Right? Harry Potter, the good and evil is both within you, and you have to choose and fight not only someone without, but you have to constrain the evil within yourself as well. It's very difficult to do. Maybe you win, maybe you lose. It's interesting. And now we're going into the election cycle, which is a learning curve for both of us. Yeah. Right? We've voted, but we haven't run for anything before. I haven't run for anything before. And so we're going into this primary, and I have the feeling that we've won the first major huge battle in that. So you settled. We should probably mention that first, right? So you settled with the township. That's a huge battle win for you.
Yep. Yeah, because, they settled. They pretty much, the township just kind of backed away from it because the Right to Farm Act says we can do what we can do. Right. So I think they just kind of left it alone. Okay. They said, okay, the state law says this, so that's where we're at. They just dropped it.
Right, and it's a huge win for you. Yeah. See, I don't think it's really a win for the citizens of Dalton. It kind of feels like a win, or it looks like a win. It seems like a win, and maybe it is in some slight sense, but it doesn't stop them from doing anything else to anyone else. Yeah. And so it doesn't seem like a change to me in any way. It just seems like they backed off because you guys were popular. I wrote these popular articles. We had a ton of... had that event, a ton of people showed up. Yeah. Like, we just did a lot of stuff with a lot of people involved.
Yep, so they backed up. Ton of eyeballs, yeah.
Right. And so it doesn't actually protect anyone.
Yeah.
But now I think we have our first major thing in that, and this was my huge thing, right? Because, so I have spinal deformities, and I have a bunch of health issues after I had a misadventure in Africa in late 2015, and I really didn't want to be involved in this so much, but I guaranteed people that they would have a real choice in this election, because when I looked up the elections from before, and I asked myself the question, like, how did Tony Barnes get in there? Yeah. And you can just have a bad election. You can have someone that kind of goes off kilter, doesn't have principles, or has bad principles, or whatever, once they get in office, and it's a chaotic thing. But when I realized no one ran against him, and we basically never have a choice in Dalton. At the federal level, you have a choice. At the state level, you have a choice. At the county level, you usually have a choice. At the township, no choices. You just get one person to vote for on everything, and then you're done. Yeah. That annoyed me, right? Because it's the same with my students in China, and I don't consider them to have a free society at all. Like, is my township similar? Like, that doesn't seem right. Yeah. So the major thing that I wanted to change was to give the people a choice. And now we have 7 Republicans running in the primary election, and one of them be out because me and Rory are both running for supervisor. And then I think there's 8 Democrats running. I think those numbers are correct. And one of those will be out because there's 5 trustees running. You can only have 4. But it's essentially even. Yeah. There is a true choice now. And it'll be very interesting to see what people choose. Honestly, don't know. It's very interesting. It's kind of an interesting mystery. So I consider, you kind of have the personal win of the settlement with the township. I think we have the public win of getting people to run and having a real choice. Now, the primary election is August 4th. There's a couple of things being decided there. And then the general election is November 3rd. Which is where, like, your position will be decided, because overall you're not running against anyone in the primary. If you're elected, what do you want to see?
Well, since never being on a political position ever, I guess I just want to see how the system works.
Right.
And if by all means keep some kind of checks and balances for individual freedom at the township level, any way I can.
Right.
Because in the end, I mean, if you don't have your individual freedom, neither does your neighbor.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'm not just going, yes, individual freedom, but my individual freedom guarantees that my neighbor's individual freedom.
Right.
And that's what we need in this world. We need to protect our freedoms, but that protects your neighbor. I'm gonna keep saying that.
Yeah.
Because that's all we have left is neighbors in the end.
Right.
And everybody, we need to come together and be able to live together.
Right.
But still be able to do our own thing.
Right.
Without hassle.
Yeah, you have to negotiate a peace.
Yeah.
Right? Peace has to be negotiated. And peace is the ultimate victory. Right? That's the whole symbol, with the victory symbol turning into peace. Peace is the ultimate victory. Now, there's various things that it takes to get there, obviously. And I completely agree. A lot of people say, well, you're for freedom. And I do use that word quite a bit, freedom or liberty, which comes from the Latin libertas, right? Which means liberty. That's what it translates as, which got changed into liberal, which means something else in American politics. It means something else in Europe, and classical liberal means something else in economics. But so it's a crazy thing, but I do like the foundation of that word and the history of the word and what that word means. But a lot of people are like, well, should you just be able to do whatever you want? It's like, no. It's not. I can't. Like, freedom doesn't mean I can just go kill somebody. Yeah, that would be a complete violation of their freedom. A violation of their right to life. The first property right is your body, your right to life. That's
the thing that bothers me as well. You say freedom, then people say, well, you can just do whatever you want. Well, haven't you ever heard of the golden rule? Do to others what you'd want done to yourself, or don't do to others what you would not want done to you.
The silver rule, that's called a lot of times. And I think it's even better. Yeah. The golden rule is super good.
Yeah,
for kind of negotiating stuff, and it's thousands of years old. And it goes back in a bunch of different traditions way back when. I think, like Confucius. I don't like Confucius, but I'm pretty sure he had a version of the golden rule. Right? And then I think the silver rule and kind of the platinum rule are a little better. Oh, Jack. He's the cat. He's a lucky charm. And the silver rules don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. Yeah. Which I think is very good, because you kind of can tell it's a violation of something. It's a violation of rights. It's a violation of respect. It's a violation of something if you don't want it done to you. Yeah. So ideally you wouldn't do it to other people.
Exactly.
None of these can completely hold. And then the platinum rule is do unto others as they want done unto them. Right? Which is ideal. Yeah. But way idealistic. Yeah. But nevertheless, it is good. And so I completely agree. The individual rights is a limit on everyone's freedom to preserve their freedom. It's kind of I get why it's a weird thing to understand. Yeah. And then so some of the specific stuff, and these are smaller issues, but I consider some of them pretty darn important. Yeah, he's just going to wander around and want to be petted. As long as he doesn't knock the microphone off, we're fine. I should have locked him in a room somewhere. And so, like, we don't broadcast or record the meetings. And I think there should be a video recording and broadcast of the township meetings available for the public. What do you think about that? It doesn't seem like a controversial thing to me.
The county, they do that as well.
And I know they've been improving the camera system and stuff,
Shoot, you could start with this basic setup here, a webcam.
I don't know if we should start with this basic setup.
Maybe not this basic. There could be a little bit more.
I borrowed the microphone.
But, I guess, we could probably set aside funds to buy a microphone and a camera. But, you could always start, there's always a place to start. Even if it's rudimentary.
Yeah. I agree.
Just start.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we got
someone's camera.
Yeah. That's how we got into farming, and we did no farming before we started this.
Right.
We had a generalization of it, but we just jumped in and started going. And you figure things out as you go.
Right.
Sometimes, yes, you need a plan, but sometimes just go and you'll figure it out as you get there.
Yeah, I agree. And see, a lot of people have asked me about the idea of making like radical change.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
You can't do
I
that.
agree. I think it's a bad idea. Like, it sounds good sometimes.
Yeah,
like, you're like, revolution.
Down. Yeah.
And you're like, you know how most revolutions turn out?
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's chaos. You know?
You end up with a dictator at that. It's not good usually.
So you have to have a systematic way of changing it. You can't just, just like we were talking, one step at a time. Take the first thing, try it, change that.
Right.
Move on to the next thing. Don't just, you can't just, let's tear this sucker down and rebuild. Yeah.
And no one knows what to expect when you're doing that. Exactly. And that's a lot of the chaos that it causes.
Because then you have multiple ideas coming from all over, and you can't put those all together.
And you can't do them right away.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the lawsuit thing for shutting down the farm. Mm-hmm. There should be like a public process and votes, and it should be, I know government's known for this, and people hate this about government, that it's kind of slow.
Yeah.
But the danger of moving super fast is that it's bad. Yeah. It goes wrong, and then it's moving in a wrong direction super fast. And so there has to be this public debate that occurs in people's houses and in a public sphere, like in the meetings and stuff, and it has to be discussed and then done sequentially. And I think it's true, and I think there should be freedom documents at the township level. We mentioned that a little bit ago. I think there should be the broadcasting thing. I think that's actually huge. I think a lot of people think that's minor. I think it's huge. Yeah. And then we don't have to debate what happened at the meeting.
Yeah, you have a recording of it. You can go back and look.
And everyone can know. You don't have to go, because a lot of people work. A lot of people have issues. They're like, what do I do with my kids? Do I drop them off? Do I try to bring them? It's weird. And so in this way, they can just be sitting at home on their computer, which we do too much. Yeah. I work on the computer. I'm on the computer way too much. But nevertheless, it's how society works to a large extent.
Yeah, you could sit down at, a lot of people get out of work at 5, and I think some of those meetings are at, I don't know when the meetings are actually normally.
They're right. Yeah,
they're right there, right around people getting home. So it's like rush. You don't have time to get there,
Right.
So,
and it's been weird lately with the whole coronavirus quarantine, not having actual meetings and all that thing to work out, which has just been a mess for everyone on an individual and societal level. Yeah. And so I think those are kind of super great spots to start. Discussions to have, that type of thing. And I think there's hopefully some processes, and I think this needs to be discussed. Like, so the state and the feds have this system of checks and balances, and it's, they had to work that thing out, right? If you read like the Constitutional Convention debates, which is a few dozen guys, and a lot that came and went, and a lot of the most important founding fathers didn't sign the Constitution, right? John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were both overseas in England and France, respectively. Samuel Adams didn't sign the Constitution because he didn't like it. Patrick Henry was the same thing. John Hancock, same thing. George Mason, who no one even remembers, is a hugely important founding father, the godfather of the Bill of Rights, didn't sign it because it didn't have a Bill of Rights, and so it was a crazy, tumultuous, rough thing to work out, and they worked out a decent document. Right, and we've improved it over the years with the amendment process. Good, they haven't had the amendment process in there, even though the first 10 amendments should have been like a preface. Yeah. But nevertheless, and the states kind of had bills of rights before that, right? So a lot of people, like, Bill of Rights were in place in different places. The Virginia one and the Massachusetts one were super important by George Mason and John Adams, respectively. Before that, but and Pennsylvania was just really weird. They were doing their own thing. It was super good, but it was everything about Pennsylvania in the colonial early state days was really, really odd. But I think that's a good thing to kind of discuss and work out in the same type of just rough people having all their different opinions, trying to work it out fashion at a township level as well. And I think it's huge. I think it'd be a good process and make a lot more people aware of kind of where they stand. I think that debate needs to take place. So that seems like a lot to me. Is there anything else? Any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns? That's what I say with my students. I had a teacher that used to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about this master plan. The township. I mean, I guess that's kind of like the roadmap. I guess the township would be taking. I haven't read it 100%. I know it was redone. I don't know, a couple years ago. I still don't understand. There's only like 300 people or something that's voted on it. It's like I don't know the population of Dalton Township, but it's more than 300.
Yeah, it's about 9,000. So in the election in 2016, a little less than 3,000 voted. I think 2,700 and something, 2,787 voted for Tony Barnes, something like that.
But it's still like, really that many people are gonna like okay where we're heading and how we divide everything up. It seems like there's a lot of division in that. I mean, we could. I don't know.
It's true. Oh, I think there's a good discussion to have. I think a lot of that is self-selection, though. It's a self-selection issue, and self-selection bias is a major thing, right? And that's a lot of what I've been trying to break at the township level. You can never get it out of the system because it's built into humanity. Yeah. Right? You can't like give a test. And the people that don't want to be politicians, you force to be politicians. And the people that want to be politicians, you cancel from ever being a politician. Yeah. That doesn't. You can't do that. And so you have to have people step up that don't want to be politicians, that then become politicians, right? Which is why I've really worked on like the very, the people that are running. Yeah. I pushed, right? Like I pushed you a little bit to like do it. Like don't back down. It's it's gonna suck.
Yeah,
but the fact that it sucks for you is why it's good that you're doing it, because those are the people we need. We don't need the people that are like, ooh, that'd be a good job. Yeah, right. That's the danger. But you can't get that out of the system. So the people that wanted to be involved with orchestrating the master plan went and got involved with it. And it's very difficult from the government perspective to be like, hey, like come get involved, and then people don't. Yeah, and that's not really your fault. So it's a difficult thing to work out. But I think it's maybe a bad focus, right? That's kind of how I would go at it. Yeah. In that maybe we should be focused more on my idea, right? And this is, is the freedom document thing. Like, where are we drawing the limits of what infringes on another person's property rights and what doesn't? Yeah. And what can the township tell people to do and not do, and what are they limited on? And working out those things seems way more important. And like following the Open Meetings Act, which the township has to enforce on itself, broadcasting the meetings, it seems very important to me, and not that hard to do. Yeah. I know there's some logistics involved, but not that many. Yeah. And so these things seem a lot more important to me than the master plan. Yeah. And there's a lot of other things township does. You have to kind of work, you have to work with the county on roads and drains and these types of things, and who's policing the area, because the township doesn't have its own police. And there's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot to it. But I think the master plan, this is my view, is that the master plan is a bad focus or a wrong focus. Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't read the whole thing.
Me either. I've just read part.
But it just seems like there's a lot of separation and dividing of who we are as a township. I mean, it always seemed like this township was more agriculture, rural. So why don't we keep it that way?
Yeah, and I think it's been kind of the systemic issue that we've talked about. And the word systemic is used too much, but I think it probably applies in this case, because I've met project managers from utility companies, right? I know some, and they don't like working with Dalton Township. And it's not just from the last 4 years; it's from before that as well. Yeah. Right? So, and that it's weird because, in my experience, utility companies are horrible to work with, and they're saying this township in particular is bad to work with. seems pretty bad. And I know people that are literally selling property and moving out of the township because they don't like the politics. And I have met people that were looking at buying property, found the perfect property, found out it was in Dalton Township, and said, "Oh, I can't live there. It's just the politics are a mess. It's way too controlling. They didn't like it purely for that reason."
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and it's weird because I didn't really know about it.
Yeah,
and I don't try to farm, and I don't have a garden, so I'm not gonna run into those issues very much. I spend most of my time on the computer writing or editing or teaching or something, and it's not a thing that does it for me. But I consider it a civic duty to step in. And so this is interesting, right? I kind of get into your motivation, because this is my motivation. We might already hit on your answer, right? But my motivation is, so when you guys got attacked, I'll call it attack. It's like a legal attack, right? And that's mundane to some people, but it also destroys life, so it doesn't seem mundane to me. It was like, I've read so much of this history, right? I've read of the resisting, and these are on a different level, but the resistance movements in Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union countries and in Nazi Germany and slavery, right? I love Frederick Douglass, and he has this awesome story about standing up to getting whipped, and he should have died. Like, they should have killed him, and then through providence, multiple times he did not. It's crazy. And when I'm reading those parts of history, I've always thought, would I do that? It's not like, and you don't know.
Yeah,
I've learned that about myself when I've been on my misadventures, mountain climbing in Africa and stuff. You're not exactly sure what you would do in an extreme situation until you're there. You don't know if you have whatever character that takes. And so when this happened to you guys, I thought, I know them, and it's in my township, which is the smallest government unit in the United States governmental system. You make the case for villages being smaller, right? But let's say townships are the smallest. And if I don't do anything here, and I thought it was way overstepping, right? I thought it was a major breach of the public trust, right? To quote Cleveland. If I don't do anything here, I never would have done anything in any of those other situations. I never would have stood up. I never would have resisted. I never would have done it.
Yeah.
I have no idea if that same mindset goes through other people or not. And you've kind of mentioned learning, you want to learn. Did you have any of that at all in this running thing? That's kind of what I've tried to inspire in people, but I don't know if it's there.
I think so. We have a lot going on the farm, and I know the trustee position isn't as, you're not there as much. It's still just there's another thing. That was the only thing kind of holding me back a little bit of not wanting to do it before. Just gosh, yeah, got to set a time and go to the meetings, and I don't know full responsibilities of trustee, but I will learn.
It's basically to be fully informed on everything.
Yeah, so it's just do I have the time and energy that I want to put into that? And you know what? I'm good. I'll get in there and I'll get it done.
Right.
I'll figure it out and we'll go from there. And I don't know. I guess it just, because at the same time, like you were saying, it's frustrating to see all this happening. You start learning about all this stuff and it's happening again. And just it's at the local, right here at this little local level.
It's not the feds. It's not the state. Yeah.
What in the hell? We gotta stop. We gotta step in and do something about it.
Right.
Especially it is affecting me, but it's affecting a lot of people as well.
Right. It's like a societal duty.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in the military. I was trained as an EMT, but I never really worked as an EMT. And those are kind of considered public service spots, and so I never really did those. I've benefited and helped lives, especially through teaching and that type of thing, some of my writing, but I essentially consider it that, like a civic duty. And it's weird. It actually in this book, this is a good book, The Question of German Guilt by Karl Jaspers, which World War II, he was in Nazi Germany. He was married to a Jewish woman, and they got left alone a little bit, but they also couldn't do anything during that time. And it goes over there like, who's responsible for what? Like, if you were in Germany at the time and you didn't resist, how much are you responsible for what Germany did at that time, right? Yeah. It's a huge question, and I don't even know if it's psychologically healthy to consider yourself guilty for the society doing something bad, right? Something I've kind of debated with myself, but I have gone with that. I've gone with that direction that, if the society's going bad and you do nothing, you're guilty of some stuff. Not in the same way, and he lays it out in there. Yeah. He breaks it down, right? He's a professional philosopher. He invented the idea of the axial age, which is a time frame in history that a bunch of important stuff occurred. And he invented how we classify psychiatric disorders to this day, right? So he does well at breaking stuff down like that. An excellent thinker. And there's subtleties to that. 4 different types of guilt he specifically goes into. But in some way, I think you largely are. And I think now maybe I've fulfilled my civic duty. And then if in the election I'm called on doing more, I'll do more. And if not, I'll go write some more poetry and teach some stuff. So how do you feel about that? Because it's kind of a weird thing to run, draw attention to yourself. Then if you lose, do you think things are going to be worse for you? Do you think people are just going to be like, just kind of ignore you? Like, what are your conjectures about that?
Yeah.
Have you not thought about it?
I haven't thought about that.
Fair enough.
I'm either way. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. Or whatever. If I get it elected or not. But I think, though I wasn't very involved in the township and stuff when we moved here, I will be more involved. If I'm not a part of it, I'll be at meetings more and just follow along of what they're doing. Right. Because even a citizen can, or a Dalton Township can be at the meeting and speak up. Hey, what's going on with this? Or ask questions. Right. So maybe that'll get them thinking and keep the eyeballs on them. Yeah. Kind of thing, So. Yeah, that's about all I got for that.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, and I kind of feel the same way. It's like, if we succeed, great, and I think we have, because we have a real election, right, coming up in August and November, and it's going to be a real election, which I'm pretty happy and kind of excited about. And then if we change out some people, that's good, right? Because there's kind of 2 things needed. You need better people, you need better principles. Yep. If you get those 2 things, you can get a government working. If you're missing either one, it won't work, right? If you have great people, but they're operating by horrible principles, it'll fail. Yeah. If you have great principles that everyone else is ignoring, then the thing will fail. And the Soviet Constitution of 1936 under Stalin had freedom of speech in it, right? But freedom of speech wasn't there. There was another little spot where it said, like, if you get approved by the government, which was a bad principle, and then it's very badly applied by very bad people. So there's that balancing act of getting those 2 going at the same time, and I think this book. All right. So this one, you talked about like an individual changing the society, The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung. Super good. Right? But this one, right under it, The Power of the Powers by Václav Havel. And he was part of the revolution in Czechoslovakia called the Velvet Revolution, because it was largely peaceful, although he was in prison for a few years before that. And he talks about, there's basically 2 ways a government can respond. They can oppress you more, or they can ease up, or you can turn them over. Right? We don't have to have a revolution because we have a vote. In a civilized society, voting takes the place of a revolution. You can change the government without having problems. Yeah, and so it's. I think it's good. I think it's good. Cool. Well, that was a super lot of stuff. And I know you're tired, and I have. Me too. It was a crazy day of teaching, as it usually is. Yeah. It's a weird thing to organize because I organize everyone individually. I work for several different companies, and I have a bunch of private students and stuff. So it's a weird thing every morning. It's a lot of fun though. A lot of fun conversations. Do you have anything else? Anything you wanted to cover?
No. I mean, I guess I can give a little update on the lawsuit, I guess. Yeah,
if you want to. Yeah, what's moving forward?
We were supposed to be going to mediation. I mean, today's the 17th, correct? Yeah, today. But since last Tuesday, I think it was, the 9th, Crystal was on a conference call or like a virtual meeting with the Ag Commission, and they are changing some stuff in the farmers market GAMPs and site selection GAMPs, which the judge at the last hearing said we were not in compliance with. So they are re-clarifying words. That's all it is all words. Right. But re-clarifying and restating their intent on those words.
Trying to better communicate the actual idea.
Yeah. So that happened. We let the other side know. They are delaying the mediation. Okay. Till the next date, whenever we can pick. And I don't know when that is, because I think they want to read over the material.
Right. Sure.
The changes that are happening. We did ask for a dismissal of the case because of those things, because it even more puts more pressure on the other side because it puts us more in compliance.
Right.
I mean, just more in compliance, or just making
it clear.
Yeah, re-clarifies that we are in compliance with the Right to Farm Act. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We're still going to mediation with the neighbor, just
at some point in the near future.
Near future,
but unknown.
I think we have to pick a date or something like that. But I think it gives them time to read.
Okay, yeah, that's super interesting to hear about. And so basically, you settled with the township.
Yep.
And so that thing's done, right? There's nothing ongoing with that, is there?
No,
that's done. And then the neighbor won, right? And that's the circuit court. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right, that's the lowest court. Yep. And then so you're obviously going to appeal it, but the neighbor asked for mediation before the appeal.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, we didn't. We mentioned that we will appeal.
Right.
And I think they were planning on that.
Right.
The judge never made a final order.
Okay.
That was like his opinion, and it was in the neighbor's side, on the neighbor's side.
Right. Okay. So he supported that side. I don't know the subtleties of the legal details.
But then he never made like a final judgment yet.
Gotcha.
Cease and desist kind of things and whatever like that. We were looking at that, but then
because he's maybe I don't know, that's conjecture, but maybe because he's like, no matter which way he rules, he's expecting it to get appealed. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's what happened there. And then since we were going to mediation, the judge is kind of like out of it.
Okay.
Until if we come together at mediation, I mean, we even if we do go to mediation, we don't have to come to an agreement.
Right.
And then they would have to go to the appeal process.
And as far as I understand, because the judge was ruling to do measurements of farms differently than the state has done them for the last couple of decades.
Yes, or even they've done it like that for decades, and they did do some changes in the early 2012.
Okay.
Somewhere area.
Right.
Don't quote me on the date.
Right, sure. But not too long ago, but sometime in the last decade.
Yeah, within the last decade they changed some things, but not really as drastic as the judge is saying. We're not measuring from property lines, and he completely changed how they're doing the measuring process. Right, which would be a huge legal change because it would affect hundreds of farms, hundreds, thousands. I mean, it could
thousands of farms. Yeah,
big guys, not just little farms.
Okay.
Like this, it can affect the big confinement operations. Raising pigs, chickens, whatever. Because they measure from the facility, the building. The facility is the structure.
Right. So there's a complete disagreement on the thing, because I went to the one court here, and that's what it seemed like to me. Like, the state had one definition of how they measure stuff, which is how they've been doing it for a long time, and that's how it's done. Yeah. And the judge said, we're kind of measuring it in this other way, which seemed odd, interesting. It seems like a major judicial, whatever the agricultural department branch is at the state. I guess maybe they take over like almost legislative function, which doesn't seem right in itself, but that's a whole that's a whole different issue. All right, and then so the mediation in the near future, but the agricultural department has already changed stuff in your direction, which you were already in compliance with. Yes. So it puts you further into the green zone, essentially. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's solid moving forward. It's just the headache of logistics.
Headache of logistics.
So you're going to be one of those people after this that's like, oh, you're getting sued. Yeah.
Yep. Right?
I'm sure you've met these people.
Oh, Mark Baker. He says, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Which I've never been sued, and I've never sued anyone. Yeah. And like, it seems like a huge deal. But I have big business people as students, and they're like, they go meet with the government for a bunch of stuff that's going on all the time. It's not a big deal to them. And it seems like a big deal to me. Yeah. It's good to hear that it's moving forward well. Yep. So you're kind of winning on a personal level. Mm-hmm. Farms are kind of winning, essentially, with them clarifying that language on a state level. Yep. We're winning as a public on a township level, I think, by having a real election. I think that's a huge win. Yeah. And so it's kind of like there's good reason to be optimistic. Things are going well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so.
I love it when things come out positive. Yeah. It's good. Cool. Excellent. That was a great update. Yeah. So I think we're all set. There's a primary on August 4th. There are 4 precincts in Dalton, so you vote in 4 different locations, which they changed the measurement for precinct 1 and 4, and they changed where you vote for some of the precincts. Like here in Twin Lake, it's at a different place. It used to be at the library, and now it's over by Twin Lake, right on the lake, actually. And so there have been some changes there. And then the big election, November 3rd, will also be at the township level. And we'll see. We'll see if changes start getting made, keep being made, and how it goes. And it'll be super interesting.
Yeah, if anything, maybe mix up some people and... we'll have some fun.
Yeah, and at least have a little bit more of a debate, checks and balances. Yeah. I think that would be a huge win in itself. Yeah. So, and I appreciate it. Lee Witte is running for trustee in Dalton. I endorse him and Gerald. I don't know. I don't know if it matters if I endorse anybody. I don't know if anyone cares. But I endorse you for trustee, and I endorse Gerald Flater from the last episode for treasurer, and and I'm running for supervisor. I guess I endorse myself. It makes sense. Otherwise, I wouldn't have run. And we'll see how this whole thing progresses. It is, like you've mentioned, it's super interesting thing to learn. Yeah. So I appreciate you having that on. Yeah. And
thank you.
Yeah. Have a good one, Lee.
Yeah.